what are the reasons to play 5th edition? What are the advantages that the game has over other versions of D&D and over other RPGs in general? This is not a rhetorical question. I have an answer. There is a reason to play 5th edition. Now, anyone who knows me knows that I don't really like 5th edition. It's not my thing. I have a lot of issues with this system in general, and I'll be getting to those issues in a future video. But first, I wanted to say what it does right. I wanted to start off with the positive. And so I will start off by saying that 5th edition has a tremendous advantage that I think no other RPG has. No other RPG can have, I think, for the foreseeable future. I think it'll be 10 years minimum before D&D can be caught up to by this thing. And that is popularity. Now, that may sound like a cop-out answer. Like, oh, popularity is not a real feature, but it is. It is a legitimate feature that affects the way people approach the game, and it affects how people play the game, and how often people can play the game. Now, if you're a DM looking for players, you're going to have the easiest time finding players with 5th edition. If you're running it online, or if you're, posting an advertisement at your local gaming store, it's the game right now. It has something like half the total tabletop RPG market share, according to some of the sort of independent studies that I've seen. So, like, you can always find players for it. As a player, you can always find a table. Whether they have room or not, it's another thing. That's just RPGs in general. There's no solution for tables being too full. But, like, it's the accessibility. Like, when I say that 5th edition is accessible, that's what I mean. The market is so wide that it makes it easy to get into a game. And so if you just want any RPG experience, and you aren't picky about your mechanics, you don't have the opinions that I do about what your game should be able to do and what sort of experience you want to have in it, you just want an RPG group, and 5th edition is your thing. You almost, like, there's too many 5th edition groups, almost like sifting through them to find the one that's for you. It almost is like a new obstacle. It's so popular. And a lot of this I think comes down to a couple of different factors. One, Wizards of the Coast has done a brilliant job marketing this game. Like, really, their marketing department is phenomenal. Like, one of the best in the industry. They have put D&D on every bookshelf, practically. Like, how many tabletop RPGs do you see at Walmart? Just D&D, just 5th edition. I've never seen any other RPGs being sold at, like, big box stores that aren't explicitly gaming stores. They've got, movies. They've got cross-promotion, things like Stranger Things, Critical Role, things like that. Now, Critical Role is starting to move on to their own system, and that maybe is going to weaken this aspect of 5th edition, but I think it's not going to be that big of a deal. I think there's so much 5th edition and D&D content out there still being made and will still be made. It's not going to stop being a thing for any foreseeable future. Now, some of this is, I'd say more than half of it is Wizards of the Coast just doing a really good job of marketing their game, making sure that it is a household name. Everyone knows what D&D is. And the edition right now that you can get is 5th edition. As far as I am aware, they're not printing older editions. So, like, if you hear D&D, and you're like, oh, what is that? I want to try it. You go anywhere that sells books, you're going to find 5th edition. And so 5th edition is extremely popular, and that brings real legitimate merit to playing 5th edition. It's not a cop-out answer. It's like, oh, it's popular because it's popular. Like there's people who are famous because they're famous, and it's sort of like a cop-out reason for being famous. It feels like to me, anyways. That's not the case here. The sheer ubiquitousness of 5th edition is a real, actual benefit to the system. It's just a shame that it has nothing to do with the game itself. One other minor thing that 5th edition does that it makes it, well, it makes it what it is that you can literally pick up the dice and start playing, having never played any other RPG, and you don't need to know the system. You don't need to know the rules. You're like, what die do I roll? That one, the DM says. And you roll, and you add the number that he says, and you're like, oh, did I get it? Yeah, you got it. And, like, to an extent, you don't have to interface with the rules any further than that, if that's your thing. If you're just hanging out, you don't actually care about, like, rules and mechanics and the gameplay, like, you could just stop there and play that forever. You know, you'll probably, I imagine you'd have to get bored of that eventually. But, you know, everyone's got their own stuff, right? I'm not going to sit here in judgment of someone who doesn't really care about the game itself. And 5th edition can be played without knowing the rules. And a surprising number of people do interface at basically that level, interface with the rules at basically that level. There's a significant population of people who just don't have any interest in learning the mechanics of the game. Those who do often find that the mechanics are pretty thin. But I'm getting into future topics, so let's not get into that. So let's see. Popularity makes the game more accessible. The fact that certain types of characters do not need to interface with game rules at all in order to technically be played. Like, you can be involved without needing to know game stuff. You can mostly freeform roleplay, is what I'm saying. And while other people in that group are interfacing with the rules, and those can sort of exist simultaneously. Most RPGs don't do that very well. You either kind of like, you usually want everyone to be kind of on the same level in that regard. Is that it? That's all I can think of. Those are the big things that 5th edition does well, and those are the reasons to play that game.